we've had time to really think and process what that could look like. I have while I was listening to the songs, and I'm so thankful for the promises of God, because that's what I cling to and that's what I hold on to. So it's a bit nerve-wracking to stand up here, but it's exciting because I have the opportunity to share with you God's word. The Bible is full of 3,000 promises, more than 3,000 promises that God wants each and every one of us to have and to know and to claim as our own. Not just for people who come to church every Sunday, not for people who, do all the right things and say all the right things. God's promises are for every single one of us. So again today, my prayer is that we leave here knowing what these promises are, and knowing that no matter what we're facing, what Goliath we have in our life, that God has an answer for every single one of those. And he has a promise that we can claim today and know that it's ours. So get your pens ready. We've got 5 promises to cover. The first one is Deuteronomy 31:8. And this is in the Bible many, many different times in different ways. I love this one personally. The Lord himself goes before you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. I alluded to it in the notice sheet, if you've read through that yet, in the beginning. I met God when I was a single mom. I believe that God used my unplanned pregnancy to bring me into a real relationship with him. And so in the middle of all that brokenness and loneliness and confusion, I met with God in a very real way. And it did change my life, and that's a great story that I have to share with others, because they can't deny the work that God's done in my life. I know a lot of times people say, yeah, but what about this and what about that? But your story, your testimony is yours personally, right? So nobody can take that away. When people are questioning God, all you have to do is say, yeah, but he's done this in my life. And nobody can question that. So for me personally, this was the first promise that I ever knew. And it's the one promise that I have gripped onto with both hands and I've never let go. I was baptized on Christmas Eve, 2003. Sarah Bella was born that June, and I was baptized that Christmas Eve. And it was a wonderful time, and it was exciting, and I was brand new in my faith. And I remember at that point we had the baptist pool over here, and the pastor would take you down into the water, and he would invite you to share with everybody, because baptism is a public declaration of your faith. And he said, Tina, share with us why you want to be baptized, and tell us why you're here today doing what you're doing. And I just very simply said, well, I have a child, and she's a baby, and she doesn't have an earthly father, so to speak, and I carried a lot of shame with that for a long time, that I was a single mom, and she was just conceived out of a very casual relationship, but she was conceived in love and gospel. So I said, I have Sarah, and although she doesn't have an earthly father, I know that we have a Father in heaven who has promised me that he will never leave me or forsake me. He'll never leave Sarah or forsake her. So that was the one promise that I had. So all those times when I feel lonely or insecure, I can look back on that and go, hang on, no matter what I'm going through right now, God's still beside me. He was with me last year, he was with me last week, he was with me 12 and a half years ago when I gave birth. He's with me today, and he'll be with me tomorrow. So that's one of my favorite ones, and that's one that I've personally held on to, and I hope it can bring you some encouragement this morning. The second one, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. That's in Isaiah 43:2. This one really encourages me, because we will pass through the waters, we will pass through the rivers, and we'll pass through the fires, but we'll pass through. We don't get stuck in them, do we? We always find ourselves on the other side. And that's exciting. Every Monday, Ray and I have a friendship that's developed over the last year, and every Monday we prayer walk together around Southport, around Burscough, we've done Preston, and it's really helped us to focus our attention on other people. We can get caught up in our own needs and wants and desires and problems, But when we start walking together, we end up just discussing all sorts of things, the town and different needs on our hearts. And last week, we were walking around Maroon Lake, and we were praying about our friend Heather, who everyone knows we continue to pray for Heather. And I said, you know, the cancer just keeps coming back, doesn't it? It's like it doesn't want to stop. And as we were talking about it, we were saying, yeah, but Heather goes through that so cheerfully, and she has so much joy, and she has an amazing blog that she keeps updated, and I read it this morning, and this morning she posted that last week, I think it was, she was looking at the mums with the kids, and she was in too much pain to get up and go, to summarize it, but now she can actually get up and go to the park for an hour and play with her kids, and that's something we take for granted. I take that for granted. Sarah wants to, not Sarah, sorry, you don't want to go to a playground. Addison wants to go to the playground all the time, and I think, oh, I can't be bothered. But Heather grabs hold of this opportunity with so much joy, and she keeps going and going and going with such a cheerful heart. And I admire that and love that about her. And I pray for my own ability to have a cheerful heart in situations like that. So as Ray and I were praying, I said, Ray, do you remember about a couple months ago, Tanya Cook, or Tanya Bright, who used to worship here? Tanya posted a picture on Facebook, and this was the image that she posted, and it was obviously David and Goliath. And I was thinking about that image, it came into my mind, and I said, remember that picture? It's almost as if Heather's cancer is that Goliath. And every time we think we've got it, we've got rid of the lung cancer, then the bowel cancer, and now it's back in the liver, sorry, then the bowel, and now the lungs, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming. But how much bigger is our God than that cancer of Goliath? It's huge. And not only is our God fighting it in a healing way, in a natural way, in a physical way, he's also given her excitement and hope and confidence. And so that's where the image came from. It was on our prayer walk, and we thought, yeah, that's what it is. So no matter what we're going through, we've got someone bigger than that little Goliath that we think is the biggest thing in the world. And in reality, it's really not, because our God is so much bigger. And he came so we can live a life of abundance and joy. And that's why we're here. So keep going. When you pass through the waters, when you pass through the rivers, keep going. They're not going to sweep over you. God promises that. They're not going to consume you. Hold on to that promise. If you're going through a really tough time right now, if you're searching for a job, if you're trying to conceive a child, I don't know what it is. There's something in you. If you're missing someone dear to you, keep going, because God is right beside you. Even if you can't see him, he's right beside you. Keep going and have faith that he's promised this isn't going to consume you. You're going to come out the other side. Number 3. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. That's God's promise of protection. He promises us that there's always a way out. One of the things about temptation, I think, is that it's an instant thing, isn't it? It's a momentarily short thing that grabs you in that moment, and you think, okay, you have a choice to make at that point. But if we can understand that whatever temptation we're going through at that moment is momentarily in your mind, think about the future and rely on what God said, and know that instant temptation has so much more of an implication for the future. We really need to grab hold of that and go, hang on, this might satisfy my need right now at this very moment, but is it going to do anything in the next year, in the next week? Think about the implications that it has long term. And that's something that I was really challenged with when I was thinking about that, is that a temptation, if you can get through it at that moment, the future is going to be so much brighter. And temptation isn't just limited to our actions. It isn't just picking up that piece of chocolate if you're on a diet. It isn't looking at that website that you're really not supposed to be looking at. It isn't gossiping. It's also something that we do internally. Temptation can also be emotional. It can be mental. I battle with self-esteem issues. and I'm tempted to tell myself that I'm not worthy. But that's not true. That's not what God tells me. That's not what God promises me. He tells me so much more than that. And he tells you that as well. So don't think that temptation is just limited to something physical. It's something emotional as well. So grab hold of that. And when it comes, grab hold of that promise that God will provide a way out. You don't have to succumb to whatever that temptation is. You don't have to. It can be tough. And you might be a little bit niggly, and you might want to pick up that drink or pick up that cigarette. But think about the long-term effect, and think about your future, and know that God is right next to you, giving you a way out. So just grab it, even if it's just picking up your bulletin and reading the back and going, hang on, he promised me a way out. I don't have to say yes to this temptation. Number 4, and my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Philippians 4:19. God's provision is promised to us. It's not something that he says, yeah, I think I'll bless you with that. Yeah, maybe. I'll see what kind of mood I'm in. He's promised it. It's a promise. Hold on to that. Know that he will provide. When I was living in America, there was a school that I really, really wanted to send Sarah Bella to. And she was about 7 years old at the time. And the school was called Christian Academy. And in America, our public school system is the school system like a council school where you don't have to pay. And our private school is one that you have to pay a certain tuition to go to. And Sarah was 7 years old. And I so desperately wanted to pull her out of the public school system for personal reasons. And I wanted to put her in this school called Christian Academy because we don't have church schools like we have here. There's not that where we were. And it was a school called Christian Academy, and everything about the school I just absolutely got excited about. They would meet in the morning, and before all of their lessons, they'd have a short little 5-minute devotional time. And the kids would pray together, and they'd start learning how to have a life of prayer. And I thought, wow, that's what I want, because trust me, as a single mom, I needed all the help I could get in this area. I really did. So I prayed a lot, and I just thought, you know what, there's no way I'm going to do it. It was $7,000 or $8,000 to send Sarah to Christian Academy for 1 year. And I remember having a conversation with my employer, and he was part of Christian Academy, and I said, you know, Darren, I really, really want her to go. And he said, well, just pray about it. And I actually thought for a minute that that was quite flippant. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'll pray about it. But I listened to him, and he shared that promise with me. He shared the promise with me that God will meet all my needs. And about 3 days later, I get a letter in the post, and it says that somebody has anonymously donated $7,000 and paid the full tuition for Sarah's education at Christian Academy. And I was absolutely blown away. I was floored. And so God did meet my need in a very real, physical, tangible way. And that year at Christian Academy was amazing. For me as a single mom, because I had their support, but also for Sarah. She really, really made some friends that, you know, she's been talking to them for the last 3 weeks because she's going back in April, and she's not seen them in 5 years, but she's picking up with those friends and getting back in touch with them. Another quick one, some friends of mine, we've had Sunfest, the Christian Music Festival. We've done it for the last 2 years. We'll do it again, September 3rd, just a little plug for that, over at Town Hall Gardens. And the gentleman who sponsors us, Mike Foster, he was a pilot for Delta Airlines. I hope it's Delta because he'll watch this. He was a pilot for a big airline. And he said, was telling us this story about God told him to leave his job as a pilot and open a roastery and make coffee. And he said, okay. And he's very faithful. Him and his wife Pam are amazing, and they're very faithful. They listen to God quite often. So Pam and Mike opened this roastery. And as soon as they'd opened it, they weren't open a week. And he said someone broke in and stole $18 out of their old beaten up cash register. They stole an old monitor that was probably, you know, in those days it was the big ones, big monitor and big computer. They stole everything. So the cost that they were out of pocket after they had to pay the insurance deductible was $574. So Mike's telling me this story, and he said then 2 days later it was Pam's birthday, and they'd gone out and they'd celebrated, and somebody handed her a card. Well, they didn't open the card until they were on their way home. And as they were driving home, Pam opened the card, and Mike's driving. And inside the card just had a little blessing, and there was money inside. And Pam started counting the money, 100, 200, 300, 400. And Mike said he knew straight away how much was in that card. And Mike had not shared with anyone that they had lost out of pocket $574. He didn't even tell Pam the total. So Pam started counting the money. How much do you think was in the envelope? $574. Not a penny more, not a penny less. God absolutely met their need. I thought, wow, that's pretty exciting. So those are just two stories that God's met the need. And then finally, I'll share one more because this one's really special to me. A year ago, last October was the 1-year anniversary of my sister's death. And my mum and I went to Formby to put flowers on the grave. And it was a really tough day, and I was really feeling for my mum. And usually we go straight to the cemetery, and I just felt like, no, you know what, let's go and have something to eat first. And she didn't have an appetite, she didn't want to eat anything, but she said, okay, that's fine. So we parked up in Formby Village, and we went into a little cafe that's one of our favourite ones in there. And as we walked in to have coffee and something to eat, there were two ladies in there, and they looked over at my mum and they said, Wendy Pace. And they ended up having a conversation for about an hour and a half. And she had lived next door to them. She grew up in Formby with them. My mum was on Watchard Lane with Auntie Sheila, and they had lived, I think, a street behind them. Is that right, Mum? They were on the road behind. And you know what? That was exactly what my mum needed that morning. She was going to face the biggest giant that she's faced since the burial of my sister, and that was to go and pay her respects on her anniversary of her death. But instead of going straight to the cemetery, I didn't hear God say go to the cafe, but he told me because I went there instead. And we went and had coffee, and she met with her old friends, and it changed the whole mood of the day. And God absolutely, in a huge way, met my mum's needs that morning. And mine, because it took a lot of pressure off me trying to be funny, because I'm really not funny. I try. Howard does that in our marriage. And he showed up, and he met her needs in a very real way. Finally, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. John 14:27. Do you ever feel really, really anxious about something? Do you ever get in that place where your stomach's just going in knots and you don't really know how to deal with it or how to manage it? I do. And that promise tells us that God will meet us in the middle of all that anxiety, of all that anxiousness. I shared with a lot of people, especially our house group, again when my sister died, I was in America, and my mum and I were on the porch, just crying. Just in a really, really broken place, and it was before the funeral. And as we were crying, we just started praying, and it was all we knew how to do at that point. And we started praying, and as sure as I'm standing here, as we're praying, I felt this amazing thing. I can't even describe it other than what I've been calling the duvet of peace. It sounds kind of silly, but I felt like I had this massive, invisible duvet around me and my mum. And it was funny because I kind of picture us as a big burrito now, because it was just all-encompassing. And it was warm, and I could feel like I could close my eyes and touch it. And the more I prayed, the more I felt this comfort around me of peace. And I couldn't explain it. All I knew is that I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to open my eyes. I didn't want to stop praying. I just wanted to keep going and keep going and keep going. And I have never, in the 13 years I've been a believer, I've never felt that kind of peace before. And I thought, wow, it's real. And all we have to do to get it is to ask for it. It's that simple. So when you're going through a really anxious moment and you're missing someone and you're feeling lonely, just know that God has promised his peace for you, that all you have to do is ask him, and he will meet you right where you are. And he'll meet you there whether or not you come to church every Sunday. You don't have to come to church every Sunday. We'd love it if you did, because we'd get to fellowship and hang out. But you don't have to be special to receive God's peace. You don't have to be special to receive any of his promises. You just have to know that he wants to give all of this to you. He wants to give it to you, and just like we get a gift at Christmas time, we can't use that gift unless we actually say thank you. We're grateful for it, we put it in our need, and we unwrap it, and we see what's inside. And that's what he's asking each one of us to do. So please, if nothing else, you remember that if you're struggling with something right now, that there's that duvet of peace that's ready to just come down amongst you, and to warm you, and to comfort you, and to fill you with that abounding love that God has for you. My best friend, Heather, in America, recently got married, and she's not been with her husband for very long, but she knows he's the one. She's had lots of trials leading up to it, you can say, and she knows Steve's the one. And she emailed me a few weeks ago and said, Tina, Steve's been diagnosed with cancer. And she said, it's not fair. I've just found him. We've just gotten together. And I said, okay, let's just start praying. And Heather doesn't go to church, but she trusted me enough as her best friend to say, okay, we'll pray about this together. And I prayed for Heather, but Heather's been praying on her own. And she sent me a message not long ago, and she said, T, I can't believe it. I was praying, and I felt this amazing thing, and I can't describe it. I said, you don't have to. It's the duvet of peace. I've known it. I've been there. It's awesome, isn't it? And she's getting that. So again, hold on to that. I just can't stress that enough for some reason this morning, because I know there's a lot of anxious hearts, especially on Mother's Day. It's a wonderful day to celebrate being a mum and having a mum. We've all had mums, good, bad, or indifferent. Every single one of us has a mum, or has had a mum. But hold on to that today, especially if you're struggling. Right, so, to conclude, we've all got Goliaths, right? We've all got giants, and we all want to conquer these giants. So you've got your 5 promises that you know all you have to do is claim to fight God. To fight God, please don't fight God. to fight the enemy. I was going really smooth up until then. Inside your bulletin, there's a card. And that card has a 6th promise on it. I told you there's more than 3,000, but we're only giving you 6 because it can be a bit overwhelming. There's a promise on that card. And if you know someone who you feel is going through a bit of a rough patch right now, who needs a little bit of encouragement, can we invite you to write a little note on that card and give them some encouragement? Maybe they need to hear that God loves them, that he knows them, that he created them for a purpose. Maybe they need to hear that. And if you're a bit like me and you're embarrassed and you're shy, I am shy, I promise, and you think, I can't do that, then just stop for a minute and think, how would I feel if somebody were to give that to me? If somebody were to just walk up to me, or if I opened my front door and in the porch somebody's posted through my letterbox, anonymous is fine. How would I feel if somebody today met me where I was, knew that I had a little bit of a struggle, and wrote that word of encouragement? And you know what? You could just put a heart on it. You don't even have to write anything, because God's promise is on that card. But when you stop and think about how it would make you feel to get that word of encouragement, bless somebody else today with that. Use that as an opportunity to reach someone and say, here, this promise is for you. Did you know that? This promise is for you, and there's 3,000 other ones. And that's your gift today. That's what we want everyone here to have today, is to know that God promises so much. And he just wants us to say, thanks, God. And he wants us to receive it. So if you're here today for the first time, if you're a guest, if you're a visitor, if you've never received that gift of God's love, you have every chance to receive that today. We have so many people in our church who care about you, even though they don't know you, who love you. And chances are, if you came with someone, you can just kind of let that person know, you know what, I want some of God's love. I want to know him personally. I want him to give me that duvet of peace, because right now life's a bit tough. And at the end of service, we've got people who are willing to pray with you as well. We don't do a big song and dance about it. We won't make it awkward. But please, if you've got some sort of stirring in your heart, that's God knocking on the door saying, let me in, because I want to make your life really, really good today. I'd like to invite the band back now.